The hitchhiking gave me a sense that there was a real perfection in the world. Something was working the way one ride led to another, the way I would be dropped off in the wrong place at the wrong time, way away from where I wanted to be, and then I would get picked up by somebody who'd change my life. Even though at this time I was a non-spiritual atheist with no exposure to any ideas like that, I could see that something seemed to be working, and that you get a lot of time to think standing by the side of the road. The decision to go hitchhiking was probably the most important decision I made.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge, shared through authentic, heartfelt communication, will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in.
Am I blinking? Yeah. I did blink. It's true. Yeah.
No, okay.
Do you want me to do the intro?
Yes.
What's my camera? This one? So normally Yael does the intro, but she's been in fits of giggles for about 10 or 15 minutes now. And this is about take 12. So we've got to do something to get it started. But anyway, today's Yandara podcast is on the subject of authenticity. So it's probably quite fitting that we don't edit all that out and pretend it didn't happen and put on the face and do the professional intro. Mm-hmm. Just go with what's actually happening, which is giggles.
Yes. I feel super happy right now, so that's a good way to start.
Okay.
I'm just going to say this is Rory Miller. He's a writer. He has published 6 books. He has been part of the Yandara community for over 15 years. And apart from being extremely well-read and studied, he's one of the most authentic people I know. So I thought it could be a great person to speak about authenticity. So welcome to the podcast, Rory.
Cool.
We did it.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. That was good.
So let's start exactly there about authenticity. And I think you've had a very unique path in the way that your life kind of developed. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
My life, yeah. Well, I grew up in a small village, a coal mining village in West Yorkshire, north of England. And it's quite a deprived area, which, looking back, I could see that gives me a lot of freedom. There was no pressure to earn money or be anything or have anything, because everybody was quite poor. Growing up in the 80s, there was less awareness of the outside world. So there wasn't much to compare ourselves with. We were all in it together. So, but also, I didn't find it very satisfying either. It didn't feel like what I wanted. So from a very young age, I wanted more than what that village offered me.
More of what?
It's hard to describe, really. These things I can only think about looking back. But just as a kid, I was just a feeling like there was more. There must be more. I even remember being maybe 10 or 11 and looking at my face in the mirror and thinking, like, what is this? Like, what am I? Do you know what I mean? If this body died, something would carry on, right? I had that sense even at that age. And then looking around in the village, there wasn't any answers for that kind of thing. Or there didn't seem to be a lot of happiness or satisfaction there, but something in me felt that there was. And then if talking about, as a life path, I think maybe that was the characteristic of my teenage years and 20s, was a sense of looking for something but not knowing what it was, but knowing that it wasn't where I was. So I left my village, moved to the city, and trod the path of possessions and money and going out and drinking and playing music and relationships. Anyway, and at a certain stage again, I thought, well, this hasn't satisfied that. And then I discovered traveling. When I was 20, I went to the US and traveled, and then I'll drive across country, that'll be great. And I did that, and then I thought, well, that was cool, but then still a sense of dissatisfaction. And then through one thing or I tried various other things, and then I ended up hitchhiking around the US between, say, the US and Mexico between the ages of 22 and 24. Mm-hmm. So pretty much constantly on the road for those 2 years. And again, that took me to places that were better than anything I'd experienced before. I would say I experienced incredible beauty in nature. And then simultaneously, there was an amazing kindness from people, from strangers, being picked up by people and fed and sheltered and being treated well, and being treated with so much kindness, which wasn't something I was used to. Mm-hmm. I hadn't really experienced that level of that kindness until then. And I guess that opened up something to me. Yeah, I remember there was a key thought in there. I was like, wow, like humans can be really good. Mm-hmm. Like, they're great, and I'm a human. And that means that I can be good also. And I want to find that kindness and goodness in myself. So that set me on a path of really trying to develop that, which, to be honest, I wasn't the best human before that, I'll blame it on my upbringing, but also that's just the reality, I had a lot of growing to do. And then even the hitchhiking, and then also the hitchhiking gave me a sense that there was a real perfection in the world. Something was working the way one ride led to another, the way I would be dropped off in the wrong place at the wrong time, way away from where I wanted to be. And then I would get picked up by somebody who changed my life. Mm-hmm. Even though at this time I was a non-spiritual atheist with no exposure to any ideas like that, I could see that something seemed to be working, and that you get a lot of time to think standing by the side of the road as well. So a lot of these ideas were just taking a natural course within me, like a philosophy that was just naturally arising, contemplating whatever was happening to me, and a lot of cool things came from that. I would say, actually, I say the decision to go hitchhiking was probably the most important decision I made. Mm-hmm. But it was a decision that wasn't actually made, that I didn't make. It was made for me.
Say more.
Through some kind of, what I would look back and say was a kind of grace. Mm-hmm. But actually, at the time, I was living somewhere and I had a few $1,000s, and then it was all stolen. I was in between places, so I was just in my car with all my stuff in my car, a couple of $1,000s that was going to be my thing that would take me across the country and carry on as I was, and it all got stolen. And I thought, well, I don't have a lot of options here. So I did have other options, such as like borrow some money and go home and work, but I didn't want to do that. That would be retreating. And I still felt there was more out there for me to discover. Whatever was driving me, I don't know. It was a feeling of a simultaneous feeling of dissatisfaction that was driving me. So I always see dissatisfaction as a friend, because it drives me to the next good thing. Yeah,
to stop doing what you're doing now and make something, like change something.
Yeah. And it's very unpleasant in the middle of it, especially being at that age and not having a clue that there was something more. I had no idea. Now it's easier to know what's out there, or to have got onto some kind of spiritual path, to have tools now. I didn't have tools then. But And I think also I could say it's a blessing that something about my personality arrives at dissatisfaction quite quickly. So that I move through things quite quickly, move towards something, arrive there, say, wow, this is amazing, stay in it for a while, and then say, but it's not it, there's more. So there, it's like the journey it's an onward climbing, and I can see in the world a lot of people arrive at a beautiful plateau, and then they stay there. And I think, wow, how can don't you want to go more? You want to let go of this beautiful thing? And, I don't know. But that's all about our own makeup, my personality, other people's personality or path.
The path, yeah.
So there was the dissatisfaction would drive me on. And for some reason, there was a feeling that there was more. I don't know why. And again, it's probably something that had been in me since birth or before birth, So,
this longing for creativity and exploration and knowledge.
I'd say it's a longing for a feeling, maybe a feeling of feeling good at its most basic level. I knew when I felt good, and I knew when I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And then if I didn't feel good, well, I wasn't satisfied with that. So I would look around, and I didn't have a problem, again, going back to the earlier question, like about expectations from the world. I never had that pressure, I don't think, to stick at something. If I was in a situation, I've been in, I had very comfortable homes, comfortable life, comfortable job, perfect situations outwardly. But if they didn't feel right, I'd say, well, I'll just let that all go. And what a great thing that I learned through the hitchhiking was that I had a backpack and a tent and a sleeping bag. And if I had $200 or even at certain stages $10 or less, I still had everything I needed to be happy. It took a long time, months and months and months, to arrive at that place. It was a place that I arrived at through experience of like, I've only got $500. Get uptight, should I get a job? Oh, I've only got 200. And then, but persevering with it and saying, wow, everything's still okay. I'm still having a great time. I'm still learning lots. And so to have that experience of having nothing and still having everything that I needed to feel good, which was the most important thing to me, then there's great freedom comes from that, because now I know even if I have a big house, and one day it blows down and every market crashes and it's all gone. So, it doesn't matter too much. There's one thing I probably need to come back to that I didn't address. So the money was stolen, and for whatever reason I decided, I'll sell my car for scrap, actually, for a few $100, and I'll just go with that. Because I really wanted to experience America by thumb, or by a way that seemed that it was a lost way at that time. We're talking the late 90s. Even then it was not something that people did, but I wanted more adventure, and I wanted to do something that I'd heard about. And, driving across America was a dream, but also after having done it, I thought, well, there's not so much human interaction. There's a lot of hours just behind the wheel alone. It gives a lot of freedom for thought, but I always wanted something more, even without really knowing what it was. And hitchhiking just transformed me to experience the kindness and the providence, the sense of being taken care of. And maybe it began my exposure to the idea of a higher power. Something was out there, something was guiding me. And eventually it guided me very much against my will to Mexico and to Yandara, to the people at Yandara, and to other people who had similarly dramatic effects on my life.
Really?
To the extent that there's almost, that was when I was 23, and there's almost my life before then and my life after then.
What do you mean against your will?
Okay. Why did I come to Mexico against my will? So this was, I guess I'd been thumbing around the States for about a year at this time. I ended up in San Diego. Do you want story.
Go ahead.
I ended up in San Diego, and I'd reached what I felt like was the end of that process. Like, okay, I've hitched all around the States. I'd been to 47 states. I'd seen all the amazing national parks that I wanted to see. I'd experienced this amazing and interactions with people and become a very different person. And I reached San Diego, which is, I like to think, in reality, it's very much the end of the road in America. It's as south and as west as you can get. That's where all the travelers kind of filter down to
Mexico.
And then, well, it's right on the border there.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm done now. I don't want to do that anymore, actually. I'd reached a place of boredom with it, to be honest. And I think that's a good place to reach, again, looking back. But then I just thought, as I usually did, was, well, I'll go back to England and I'll get a job and I'll get a house and I'll, whatever, do the English things. And
what society tells you to do.
Yeah, good point. Could be that. It was the only thing I could think of. But yeah,
it's
it's
like
good.
Conditioned in us that's what we're supposed to do.
That's a good point. Yeah, because even though I'd said, I didn't feel that pressure, but I have at various times in my life, I said there is a voice in my head that speaks of certain ideas or suggestions, and voice of parents maybe. It's a tiny voice, but it is there. Yeah. So that was the only thing I could think of, and I knew I was bored of what I was doing, wonderful though it had been. And then in San Diego, I was walking down the beach one day, and in a very peculiar way, which so they'll fill up too much time to tell that story, but okay. In a very, very peculiar way, I bumped into a guy on the beach that I'd met 4 months previously, about 1,000 miles away in Montana. And it was so mind-blowing to meet him, the whole build-up, the way the day had unfolded and the weeks before even. And we just really connected really, really nicely. And he told me he was going to Mexico, and he had this whole pilgrimage almost worked out in his head to go and see the pyramids down south. And he said, "You should come with me." I said, no, I don't want to, it's dangerous. And I'm done. I'm going home. I've got my plan. I'm just got a few more days here, and then I'm going back. And he was sad about that, but he accepted it. And I had a few more days with some other friends there, some other friends that from a year or two before. And something about the meeting or a feeling that arose in me just was like, there's something too weird about this. Now, having lived, the last 25 years in this kind of manner, I would know to recognize this kind of meeting or this kind of feeling. But at the time I didn't. I just felt like, what, this doesn't make any sense. And there's something like, there must be something there. And I couldn't shake it. And for some reason, I decided to toss a coin. And, it was basically heads Mexico, tails England. And beforehand, I set up the regulations. It was be a best of 3. You can't change your mind halfway through and say, I don't like that. Let's make it best of 3. You can't do that. I set it all up. I had witnesses there, the friends that I was staying with. And what did I say? Heads Mexico. I don't remember exactly, but let's see. And the first toss came heads. I said, no. The first one was tails, England. I felt really good. I thought, great. Good. And then the next one came up, heads, Mexico. And I kind of got a little bit anxious there. And I thought, no, it's just the drama. This is just to make me, set it. It can't be too easy, right? It can't be 2-0 to England. And bam, it comes up again. Is it heads, Mexico?
Yeah.
Comes up, heads, Mexico. And I had this real sinking feeling.
Oh, wow.
Which again, this experience is so useful to look back on, but a kind of sinking feeling like, I don't want to go. It's scary. It's dangerous. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't speak a word of the language. My friends said, well, what are you going to do? So I'm going to go. And again, I look back and I said, well, what was it about my personality, my psychological makeup that allowed me to just change like that? But that's something about me did that. I never Even the first time I flew to the States when I was 20, I was very terrified of America. But I didn't book any accommodation or anything like that. I just landed and walked around. Then I went to a hostel, and the hostel was full. And then I went to another one, and that was full. And I said, I'll just walk around all night.
What?
And, there was something about my personality, even though I wouldn't consider myself brave, or I just did stuff.
It feels like a kind of faith, and kind of a relationship with something bigger.
Yeah. And I think people see that about me, the way I live, or they hear stories and they say, oh, you have a lot of faith. I would say I've developed that. Consciously, that's developed, and I'm aware of it now. But back then, it was kind of an unconscious faith.
What was it? What was it that gave you this kind of, I don't know what the word would be, like a support to do something that's really out there, like just going to a foreign country that you don't know, not having a place to stay, and then just saying like, okay, I'll walk around all night.
In New York City, which I was terrified of. There's a movie called Kids that I watched like the week before, and it's all about terrible things in New York.
Oh no.
So I was genuinely terrified. So yeah, what? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. It was just something in my psyche. It didn't come from my parents or from anybody I knew. It wasn't common to everybody that I grew up with. So I'm not sure. I have no idea.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, that's a good question that I do use as a tool, a contemplation tool, when I want to do something that's maybe a little scary. What's the worst that can happen? But again, at the time, I wouldn't have had that in my mind. I just did stuff.
Maybe it's the stupid courage of young people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The fine line between bravery and stupidity. But you're right, there was a kind of faith like, oh, this will be fine. Things will work out. And I think it's still very much part of me, like, oh, well, let's do this. Well, are you sure? Yeah, it'll be fine. And people say, okay, yeah, well, let's go along with it. And it is.
Yeah.
But so I don't know, past life, who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Something that I'm really hearing throughout what you're telling us is about this synchronicity that is always available to us when we tap into it. And I really believe that the way that we tap into it is through the feeling. If something feels good or something doesn't feel good. And that's how we are really guided in this world. And it's so interesting that you're saying that you were really following this whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And when you did that, you were able to tap into this synchronicity of strange meetings that opened up different opportunities and interesting experiences and so on.
Yeah, totally true, Yeah. Yeah, there was so much synchronicity. And then as it became on what I would say a conscious spiritual path, where I kind of I was doing it knowingly with awareness and having some idea of what that meant through reading and talking with people, it grew and grew. Feeling good grew.
Yeah.
And so much synchronicity. And that maybe this encounter in San Diego that brought me to Mexico, I would look at that as a key example of a synchronous meeting. Even the way I first met him 4 months previously was very synchronistic. There were several weird things that just brought me to this guy, that brought me back to this guy. I wasn't even supposed to be in San Diego, and then I just made a last-minute decision to go there because the bus ticket was about $3 cheaper. But some weird guiding force that I look back and I can say, wow, like what a great plan it had.
Yeah.
And the way that it executed that plan, and that it brought me down to Mexico. And so many amazing things came from that experience. Just even to cross the border as a nervous young man, and to look around and say, wow, no, Mexico is completely fine. We're in Tijuana, and it's supposed to be the worst place, one of the worst places in the whole country, and it was completely fine and very relaxed, the most relaxed place I'd ever been. And we hitchhiked down the Baja about 1,000 miles and had an amazing time, and really felt the magic of the Mexican land and the Mexican people. And it started a real transformation for me. Like the transformation is constant, but I mean, to look back, and when I say it was a key point in my life changes. There was before then and there was after then. And it led me to people that felt destined, and that gave me, again, I can only say this looking back, but I could say, oh, they brought me to what I'd always been looking for without even knowing what I was looking for. Yeah. Well, most of the time that I was looking for something.
Yeah, that's another really interesting point, because you say, like, I can only know this looking back, but at the moment you kind of followed what felt good to you. Yeah. And I think so many of us can, I mean, I think everybody of us can relate that in the moment something can be so unclear why it's happening, but when we look back, we are able to know that experience was actually detrimental to our growth and to the way that our life path developed.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a sense, I've read this in various books where they say after we die and we get to see our life from a multi-dimensional perspective, or whatever you want to believe about that, but get to see our life from a much enlarged perspective, and that we see it as a tapestry, that on the one side is a crazy mess, and then you flip it over and it's beautiful. And then, I've had experiences, say, with one teacher, I did doing a 28-day vision quest up the mountains, kind of aloneness with John Milton, yeah. And to have that, I had that experience when I was 23 of like every single thing in my life. And there were some very hard times and some very confusing and weird times. And I had that experience in the body then of like, it all made perfect sense. Everything it wasn't just an intellectual thing. It was a very integrated kind of full body or soul experience. And maybe again, it helps draw that line between the life before and the life that came after, because it all just dissolved, that whole previous life up to that age. It just made perfect sense. There was almost no reason to even think about it anymore. It was just, that's all washed away, every difficult thing, or every good thing too,
Yeah.
And that's a great reminder. Like, I don't always feel like that now, but I get enough small reminders. That was a very dramatic experience. There's enough small reminders to live a weird year or a weird week or a weird day, and then something comes and it all falls into place.
Yeah.
And to know, and I got that through the hitchhiking also, just spontaneously arising, like, wow, there's bad things lead to good things.
Yeah.
So they're probably not bad things.
Exactly.
And good things lead to bad things. So don't get too excited about the good things, but the bad thing will lead to another good thing.
Yeah.
And one more thing I must say again.
Go ahead.
To do with synchronicity, like so many of us experience these synchronicities of, we want to follow our good feelings, and that goes hand in hand. And I think another real blessing that I had just naturally, for reasons that I couldn't possibly name, was just an ability to let go of the stuff that didn't really matter. Whether it might be a material comfort or attachments to something in particular, a situation, even friends that were maybe not really the best people for my growth, So for some reason, I just had that ability to let go of whatever it was and go with it. And that's why I was able to I had a strong intention to go to England, but obviously I have to go to Mexico.
Obviously.
And my original plan was only to go for a week or two.
Wow.
And
20 years later?
Yeah. It became very clear that I needed to stay there. Actually, that was more through dreams than... I felt really good in Mexico, but I still had my plan and I couldn't let go of it. And then every night I would dream of getting off an aeroplane in England and looking around and thinking, oh my God, what am I doing here? This is so wrong. I have to get back, but how can I get back? It's so far. I don't have the money. And I would wake up in my tent and kind of tentatively unzip it. And so I'm still in Mexico. Thank God. And it was such I'm not saying there's anything wrong with England, because it could have been perfect to be there too.
Yeah.
But it was such a strong feeling to not be there, and such an incredible feeling to wake up and find that I was still in Mexico. And but it took literally 3 or 4 of these dreams every night to say, okay, I think there's a message here. It wasn't, dreams are a very strong part of my life, and I get the messages very, very clearly and very strong. And I say, okay, yeah, I get it. So I'll go in that direction.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't like that. And so it took a little bit of work to let go of that plan, but it was so clear.
Yeah, I think it's really an important point here, because it's really about being open and receptive to these little signs that we get. And honestly, I see it as the universe kind of talking to us and guiding us in different ways, also through feelings, like the feeling good. I see that as kind of our dialogue with the universe and it guiding us, whatever it is. But it's really about being open. So if you have a dream and then you have a conversation with a friend that you didn't bring up the subject about what you dreamt about, and or even so many little things that happen that if you're not really open to it and aware to look for these things, you can easily miss it.
Yeah.
So it's really about like kind of opening up to it and noticing it.
Yeah, noticing it. That's such a key thing. Like, I think probably one of the most important thing is just to cultivate awareness. If we don't have an awareness of what's happening, it's so difficult to do anything, to go anywhere. But awareness of ourselves, awareness of our situation, awareness of the deepest level that we can be aware of as well. Just to keep going deeper, what's really going on inside myself and outside myself. And if we're not present and we're not paying attention, we're going to miss it.
Yeah, which a lot of our society is really built around numbing ourselves so that we don't notice, right? Like watching TV, drinking, like all these different ways that we numb ourselves. And then we kind of lose touch with the sensation of what is actually happening and kind of this awareness.
I guess so, yeah. I try not to blame society.
I know, it seems like I'm blaming society a lot, isn't it?
But that's very common in these kind of conversations. We say, oh, the world does this and society does this. And I say, no, I have a choice about whether to go along with that or not. And I'm completely free. I have complete freedom whether to choose that or not. And I maybe lose something.
Yeah.
I won't have all the benefits that materialism brings. Whatever, the coffees but I don't want those things because they're not as good as freedom and the great feeling that just comes from being happy.
Yeah. And that really comes from cultivating this awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we do. I think maybe in the beginning we talked about there was a mention of bravery, or what makes one person give up that stuff and persevere to find something else. So, like I say, for myself, it was just an unconscious thing that I thought, well, I'm going to do that because that's what I want to do. I think for other people, maybe it would take bravery to do that, to say, you know what, this office, cappuccino, Starbucks, always connected situation is not good enough for me. It's not giving me what I feel I want. And I'll just let it all go and whatever, live in a tent in the mountains or whatever it is. There's so many different ways to do that, but whatever it is, it's whatever that leap of faith is as well, which I think it goes hand in hand with then following the feeling and paying attention and finding the synchronicity. And if we commit to a path, then the synchronicities arise. The universe conspires to bring us what we want or what our souls want. But also there's that leap of faith that comes, and I think that can be the foolish but still good, or brave, or But I feel like I've always tried to push myself into that leap of faith and had that ability. Whatever blessing I was born with is, it's not too difficult to see, well, that's the direction I need to go in. I'm nervous. I'm frightened. Okay. All right. So I'm nervous and frightened. I see that. Yeah. But we can still do it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The leap of faith. Yeah. Because everyone will experience that. It doesn't mean giving up all possessions. It might mean having a difficult conversation, or it might mean, well, it means so many things to different people. And for me, it's such an important part of the path, because the path challenges. It will challenge us to higher and higher levels, and more difficult levels too. If we're climbing a mountain, the air gets thinner, the rocks get a bit slippier. But if we want to persevere in that, I think to grow, there's always going to be challenges. I say, people maybe they pray, oh, give me faith, give me faith. Well, God or whatever doesn't come down and say, okay, bum, here's the magic finger, now you have faith. Yeah. It will bring experiences to challenge us to develop faith. And faith is like a muscle. Yeah. It's like working out at the gym. Say, oh, can I have big muscles? You say, no, well, here's a gym membership. I'll give you 2 months free at the gym, and you go and do the work.
Exactly.
And part of developing faith and taking these leaps is what I call it, but I must have read it somewhere, is hanging out in the uncertainty. It's like, okay, I'm gonna let go of this stuff, and this stuff is kind of cool, and it's familiar and safe and nice, gives me a lot of good, and I'm gonna take the leap. And then there's a period of time, could be very short, could be longer, where we're in the uncertainty. I've made the leap, and you know what? I haven't made my soft landing. I haven't been rewarded. I haven't. What's the word? I'm just there. I'm in the uncertainty, and it's frightening, right? I haven't got this thing.
It's maybe uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've let go of all this stuff. Maybe I should go back to that stuff. So again, that's a real test of faith. Like, no, will you persevere while you're in the uncertainty?
In the uncomfortable place.
Yeah. Hanging out there. Maybe that's where faith comes, because we say, okay, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to keep going. And if we want to anthropomorphize the universe, we can say, well, the universe looks at you and says, okay, yeah, good. You've passed the test. Now you get the reward. And to do that enough times, which again, I think my path was a very experiential path of letting go, moving on internally, externally, moving to the new thing, and getting the thing, finding the reward and saying, wow, this really works. To let go, to feel scared, to keep going, get the reward. You do it enough times and you're like, oh, okay, I'm in the uncertainty. All right. I'll keep going. Yeah. So it becomes less and less scary, I guess. Anything we do over and over experientially, it becomes less scary, and we have more faith that it's going to work out, whatever it is. Yeah. Doing a podcast.
Doing a podcast, definitely.
Teacher, I used, being a school teacher, I worked as a school teacher. It's terrifying. How am I going to do this? And then you do it enough times, I can do that. I can do this. Yeah. And I know it experientially because I've already done it before.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, love, love that. That's so true, because we all know this feeling of being in the discomfort, in the verge of doing something that you really want to do, but you're terrified of doing it. And really the only way to move forward and kind of experience this growth and development that a lot of us are looking for is going through this discomfort. And what I have found in my own path is similar to what you're saying, is that when I was able to take this leap of faith, when I did the thing that scared me the most, that seemed the hardest thing to do, then really the reward is where, the reward showed up after that. Yeah. Yeah. And actually we get a double reward, because we get the reward of moving into a more satisfying place in life and within ourselves. And we get the reward of faith. Yeah.
which is incredible. If we have faith, the faith that, you know, things will work out, and or that there is this weird higher power that's kind of got the puppet strings and making things, you know, that's great to have faith, because then there's so much less worry in life. There's so much more freedom too. We don't have to hold on to the standard things.
Yeah.
You know, the things that society tells us we have to hold on to.
Yeah.
All the material stuff. You know, I'm okay without it.
Yeah,
But,
definitely.
yeah. And there's so many ways that even just, you know, my faith is very much in a lot of external travel and movement, or living with very little. But for a lot of people, for myself also, it's about opening up into vulnerability, opening up to another person, connecting more deeply with other people. It's challenging, it's scary, and we're never sure it's going to work. But the more we do it, we get the reward of getting that connection, or getting to see that, I can share myself, or I can express myself.
I can do something scary.
Yeah, whatever
Definitely.
it is. Yeah.
I was just going to say that I agree with you completely, that it's really about opening up. Because for me, when I think of faith and what it is, because I always try to be skeptical in what I believe in. I don't just take anything for granted what I'm told. And the reason that I really resonate with spirituality and having faith in something bigger is that having that thought really causes me to open up to something that is bigger than even what my mind can conceptualize.
Yeah.
And when I do that, then I stop limiting my experience, and I just open up to the possibility that something bigger, something that is beyond my comprehension can occur.
Yeah. Perfect. And there's always something bigger.
There's always something bigger. There's always more growth to experience, more development, new experiences, new people to connect with, deeper levels of connection to have.
Yeah. I think that's so true. Yeah, there's always more.
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, Yandara.com, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode. So I would love to speak with you a little bit about fear and how you kind of managed and negotiated that fear that you had doing these things, that in a way that enabled you to really go for it.
Yeah. Well, if I think back, say, to the early mid-20s, when I was really doing this stuff, I'm going to credit like my young foolishness. I think that definitely plays a part. Like there was just, maybe I didn't contemplate. What do they say? We don't really understand consequences until we're about 28 or something.
Yeah.
So maybe that played a part. And whatever I was born with, that thing that said, oh, you can fly to New York and it'll be okay. You know, you can do this and it'll be okay. Oh yeah, whatever that thing was that I had. But also my first teacher, John Milton, there are certain things that really stuck with me. You know, I spent weeks with him and listened to him talk, hours and hours and hours of teachings and anecdotes and stories. And anecdotes and stories are the same thing. But and I think one of the things that really stuck with me about him was he talked about the polarity of the polarity of love or fear. And these days I would say, well, there's fear and there's something else. I was thinking about this yesterday. I haven't quite come up with what the other thing is, because I think love is so hard to define. or it has so many definitions. But I think fear is much more easy to define. As long as we can define one of the things, then if you don't do one of the polarities, you're doing the other one, so that's fine.
How do you define fear?
Well, I haven't, but I think it's easier to recognize.
Yes.
Well, we can say maybe it's got these characteristics: resistance or contraction, or if I know that thing is good for me, but something's holding me back, that's probably fear. So don't choose that thing. So it would have been something that John said that really stuck into me. Like, there's this choice. For the sake of this, let's call it love or fear. But and it just really hit me, like in my core, like, I'm going to choose the other one.
Yeah.
I'm not choosing fear because I know that the other choice is by far the better choice. And I'd met people that had obviously made these choices and they showed that it was worth it because they were happy and glowing and they had what I didn't have. They had the thing that I felt I'd been looking for. So I'm like, I'm going to do what they did. What did you do? I'm going to do that. Okay, let's just go for it. And I just decided to go for it. I was 23 and I just knew I had a few of what would be called maybe mystical experience or spiritual. I wouldn't call them spiritual experiences because they can be, just having an incredible meeting with someone in the street and a life-changing conversation is a spiritual experience. I had those, but also some kind of otherworldly experiences. I'd call that a mystical experience, a transcendental experience. It wasn't of this reality. And I thought, well, that's really cool. That's way better than all the other stuff that I've done. So I want more of that. And I felt like, okay, well, doing these things that this great teacher has said, I'll do that. So yeah, that really hit me. And so life always presents opportunities to choose, whether it's fear or something old. I wanted the non-fearful thing, the new thing. And I just was very determined. I'm going for it. There's nothing else there's nothing else that could match up to what those transcendental experiences gave me. So yeah, let's do that. It's great.
Yeah. And
I was very lucky again in my life. I was traveling. I had my tent, my sleeping bag, my backpack. I didn't worry anymore about being physically okay because I was always physically okay as long as I had a place to sleep and a bit of food in my belly. Like, what more? You don't need anything more than that, or I didn't, to be happy and to be fulfilled. So I was very lucky that I had that freedom and that opportunity to really test myself and to just go for it. And whatever fear arose in front of me, I took a breath and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into that. And almost like I had a checklist then, like, what am I afraid of? Okay, let's do it. What have I been resisting? Okay, let's look at it. Let's go into it.
Looking at it more rationally, like, is this fear actually rational?
Yeah. I mean, those things, but a lot of it was very situational. A fear about a person. I'm afraid to say this to a person, or I'm afraid to, they say with a family person. I'm thinking of a family person that I just hadn't had an interaction with because there was a fear there. So let's go see them, and let's have an open conversation and a connecting conversation, and let's look at the reality of the interaction. And I didn't, and it was fantastic, So again, whatever an internal, external, whatever the fear was, I would go for it. And then, I'm not saying I run out of fears. There's always something, but pretty much it doesn't take too long to go through them.
Because you've done it over and over, that you know how to kind of navigate it. I've heard somebody speak about it in a really interesting way, that it's really not about not having fear. It's about having fear and then doing the thing anyway.
Yeah, there's the famous phrase, feel the fear and do it anyway. I don't know where that comes from, but there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, I want to say it's good to discern what's fear and what's caution and what's wisdom. Sometimes we can resist things because it's wise to do so. Discernment's a great thing. I think I've really tried to cultivate discernment. which I feel like that's something people could work on more. A lot of people that I've interacted with, discernment's so important.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you used to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be aware of that. Okay, fear's arising. Okay, crippling fear is arising.
Yeah.
I did a lot of Vipassana, so that really helped with being able to observe it. What does it feel like? Where is it in the body? Is there a root of that? Oh, maybe I can trace it to a childhood memory or some conditioning or some. Well, it could have so many different roots, And okay, so that's interesting. But I'm still going to do the thing, and in some ways, it's a lot quicker to just do the thing. Mm-hmm. We could spend years in therapy trying to work out a fear and intellectually understanding it perfectly and getting to the root of it and saying, okay, well, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to have that fear, but it's still there.
Yeah.
But if you just do the thing you're afraid of, you don't have the fear anymore.
Yeah.
Or if you do, well, do it again. Do it 10 times. You probably won't be afraid of it anymore. You probably think, oh yeah, I can do that. Or 100 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this immersion therapy, I think it's called, that you're put into a situation that you're really afraid of in order to get over it. Like if you're afraid of sharks, they put you in a cage with sharks underwater.
Well, as long as it's well studied and tested and isn't more traumatizing, yeah.
Well, I'm not really well read about the subject, but from what I understand, it really helps you get over it because you see that the beast isn't that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So something like that when I hear something like that, it reminds me of a lot of kind of 60s things and came out of California, encounter groups and anyway, a lot of it was quite weird, but I'm sure these days it's all with doctors and
I think so.
Good.
Yeah.
It was good to hear. I can just imagine, you've got to have that training in awareness. You can't just say, here's a shark, But it's okay, just, to learn mindfulness, to learn what the body's doing in moments of fear. Yeah, to have a compassionate kind of team around you when you're doing something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that's fine. I get a bit nervous when I hear that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I really have no idea how this process works. I'm not the person to talk about it. It's just, I've heard of this process.
We both, there's a lot of weird stuff out there that is not, even may feel good in the moment, but isn't long-term good, isn't truly good, like deep down. A lot of stuff that came out of the 60s or there's, I'm not in spiritual circles. There's some weird stuff. So, and then that touches on something I thought about earlier, this idea of following one's feelings. And I talked a lot about, if I felt bad in a situation, I would move towards what felt good. But also there's, and again, it comes in where discernment comes in, is like, well, when I say I felt bad in a situation, I would mean, say, over a period of weeks or months. Or if you have a bad year, you're like, yeah, this probably isn't the job for me. But so I didn't really mean feeling good in a moment, which can be a great guide. But I've also had plenty of times where I've felt great in the moment and I've gone with that. And then I look back 2 years later and I'm saying, I was going with something different than a true soul feeling, a true intuition, guidance. There was other things going on. There's all kinds of feelings like, lust or just delusion or just being mistaken about something. Yeah. Especially maybe as I was a young, kind of very, very high spiritual, kind of ungrounded a lot of the time. So there's such a discernment that comes in to help navigate the path more smoothly, I would say, which is tricky again. Yeah. So I don't know, it's great to follow one's feelings, but I think these days I would say I will follow myself, which includes feelings and includes my mind and my body and my learning and my what wisdom I might have or not, or, I want to be in touch with all of those things and make a decision from the whole part, because I've seen how my feelings have got me into trouble when it's that very temporary feeling rather than, being guided. Yeah, like I say, if I feel bad for a year in a place, then I probably should, either try and look at it differently, or find out what's going on inside myself. Is it the place? Is it me? And make a change.
Yeah.
That's based on a lot of observation. Like, this really isn't working. I've tried everything. It's not working.
Yeah.
Not just like, I don't feel so good today. I'm going to leave my husband and move to some ashram somewhere, or, train to be whatever, these drastic changes. Like, if I go and watch a movie, I've been very careful. I don't make any decisions in the hours after watching a movie, because my feelings are so altered.
Right.
That was so inspiring. I'm going to change my life and do this and do that. I wake up tomorrow and think, what was I thinking? So it's good to have that awareness, I think.
Yeah. In the spiritual world, I think it's divided to like true self and ego, that these feelings come from. And you're right, because it really can be misleading. Sometimes we feel like something is right for us, but it's our egoic need of kind of like adventure, or even this high that we get from doing something extreme, or the true self, the soul self, this, it's just hard to get in touch with that. Yeah.
And the ego, and then there's probably lots of other things going on as well.
Right.
So, yeah.
But how have you cultivated this discernment of really sensing which part of yourself is leading you?
If I have cultivated it, I've cultivated it by cultivating it. Just doing it and practicing it and seeing where it's worked and where it hasn't worked. And a lot of learning and a lot of reading and, taking stuff from great teachers from the past, and you could call it a process of trial and error as well. Awareness, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It comes back to awareness, awareness of myself and my experience, and I think just trying something out and seeing if it works.
Yeah.
And then I said, that didn't work. Well, I'll try again in a different way. That seems to have been the thing, there's so much out there, so many techniques and tricks and tips. So to try and take those on board and use what works. And I think also just seeing where not having discernment doesn't work as well. Not having discernment seems to get people into trouble. I see people, I say, they just have so many problems in their lives, and I think, but they always choose the wrong person or the wrong group of people, and then they feel that group did them wrong. But you chose them, and if you have discernment, you won't make those choices. So it seems such a key thing to have, and just to be I don't know where it comes from really, but to learn how to be a good judge of character. And again, I don't know how that comes about really, because I can remember, I'm not going to big myself up here, but people say, you seem to you can see people at a level that other people don't see. I say, I don't know. I have no idea, because I've always seen people how I've always seen them. But looking back and say, when I was a kid, I felt like I could feel what other people were feeling or what was going on beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Not reading thoughts necessarily, but
sensitivity.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's always been normal for me, so I couldn't tell I don't know what it's like not to have that. And then I can see other people like really don't have that. I can say, they say, meet this guy, they're great, and I meet them and I go, I got a really weird feeling about that. But there's 10 or 100 people saying, they're amazing,
Yeah.
And that's another test of faith, is like, what do I trust here?
Yeah.
Do I trust myself? Do I trust the crowd? And I think it's not about making that choice then. It's about really saying, just taking a step and taking time to figure out, and watch the crowd and get to know the crowd and get to know the guy that they're trumpeting and putting on that pedestal.
You're talking about a spiritual leader.
Yeah, a spiritual leader or just a friend in a group. And I've had a lot of experiences now where I get a weird feeling about somebody, and a month later or a day or a year later, I learn, they come back and say, oh, that guy, there was something really wrong with them, and this happened and this happened. And I'm like, I'm just like, okay, that's such an encouragement for my own intuition then, which I've had enough experiences of doubting it, and going with maybe what the group was suggesting. And those were beautiful experiences to see, like, oh, wow, my intuition, I still doubt it because it's not nice for me to be in opposition to a group. I don't like that experience.
Yeah.
And yet I feel like I've had enough times where my intuition has proven true.
Yeah.
Experientially, that I'm like, okay, I need to honor it. That is myself, even if it maybe makes my life a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. But and then there's even discernment with my intuition, because sometimes I'm wrong too. So maybe a lot of it is just about having patience and taking the time to observe and try and go deeper into that. And then I think about things like the Dalai Lama once said, maybe in a conversation about false teachers or abusive teachers. He said, just study their life for 10 years in depth and then decide whether to commit to them or not. And I think, that's so wise and so beautiful, and so it's such an extraordinary teaching in a world where we want everything so quick, and we want to just, I felt an amazing thing with this person, I'm giving up my life and going with them.
Yeah.
And I like to try and educate myself and reading, and some great documentaries about cults that had very beautiful, charismatic leaders, but you look beneath the surface and it's not good.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really important point there, because even if we're not talking about spiritual leaders, we're talking about a leader in a group. I had an experience recently that something like this happened, that really there was somebody who kind of emerged as a leader, but in the end, this kind of leader, in quotes, was actually pretty harmful to the situation that they were in.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, the way that you speak about it, because it really does take a lot of discernment. And I think it's also a lot about self-knowledge and awareness of self, and kind of honesty, and really knowing yourself enough to trust when you have a feeling, because it's easy within a group to be kind of swayed in one way or another. And it's also easy to kind of doubt yourself in that situation, thinking like, okay, a lot of people are thinking one way and I'm thinking another way. Maybe I'm wrong, because a lot of people are thinking a different way than I am. And it takes a lot of self-knowledge and kind of trusting yourself, and really, I think it's a lot about getting to know yourself enough to be able to make that discernment of, can I trust what I'm feeling right now, or is this a place that I need to grow?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard. I can't say I've always got it right, but the times I've got it wrong and then seen the results, a good teacher also, they give me that courage, and it does take courage too, especially, like you say, the groupthink is so powerful. And, if we read any psychological study on that, we can see that very clearly. So there's a real courage in going against a group, or in going against just trusting in oneself. And it's great. Courage obviously has the root word meaning is heart. So it's about being in touch with our hearts and our true selves. And it's very tricky. Because there are times we might, to go with the group gives us popularity and friends and all this. So it's so hard to go along with that. And again, I feel like I've been lucky in that it's not something that's appealed to me particularly. Or maybe being a bit of an introvert or being comfortable by myself. It's not been a problem to leave a group that wasn't serving me, or a friend group that wasn't serving me. It's not just spiritual groups, it's friend groups, it's partners. Why do people choose partners that damage them? I can't say I've never done that either, but I've learned more. I've got better discernment now than I did in the past through all kinds of experiences. So it's so important. It's so important. And there's different things like related to spirituality or the modern Western spirituality that we find ourselves a part of. I think a lot of discernment can come from context and through study, like the study of the history of the movement. Some people have a problem with the term New Age. I don't, because I think that describes modern Western spirituality. It doesn't necessarily mean we're all off with the fairies, waving crystals around.
I wish we were.
It's a nice stage, but it passes. But well, not always. But anyway, But that's what we're a part of. And so one of my passions has been to study the context and the history of that movement. I think other religions are very good. Other movements, Christianity is very good at knowing its history and knowing where things come from and studying its history and, where did the idea come from? And I'm not sure that we've done that so well. And I think that, Christians have their own problems with discernment too, and bad teachers, right? We know that too.
Yeah, every religion.
Yeah, every religion. But I think having studied the context and the history and case studies, for example, of good teachers and bad teachers and in-between teachers, and it really helps with discernment too, because we can relate.
Yeah.
Something, we meet a person and we can relate it to something that's outside of just our own experience. Our own experience is great, but it's also good to take advantage of thousands of years of history and millions of people and all the learning that's happened. So I think, in contradiction to most of my associates and people I know within this movement, I think I've developed a passion for that, studying the context and where do ideas come from, and studying teachers and making up my mind, this guy I think there's dodginess there. This great teacher. And I'm saying, I know what he actually did. So no, I don't think so. I'm not going to listen to what he had to say.
Yeah. So back to discernment.
Back to discernment, yeah.
And study.
And then one teacher I can always be wrong, but one teacher I would say was, I think is decent, was like Ramana Maharshi, who was once asked, why are these false teachers? It's not fair, basically. Like, these people come in all fairness and goodness, and basically, he said something like, because they don't have discernment. They haven't truly gone to the depths of, I don't know. I think in the beginning of the spiritual path, for me and for a lot of people that I knew back then, there was kind of an opposition to intellect. And it's like the mind was the enemy and the intellect was the enemy. And there are a lot of things that floated around. Osho's saying, come to me, you've got nothing to lose but your mind. And you go and you get high and you dance around and you're all happy. But again, I wouldn't say that was a story that ended gloriously. I like to see where the story end, though.
Yeah, but that's a conversation for another day.
Sure. Okay. But what I do want to say about that is the idea of the intellect being the enemy. And I feel like it's a part of ourselves. It's great to go beyond the mind and beyond the limitations that the mind put on us, to experience something that's beyond mind. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And to get, if the other parts are neglected, if the feelings and the heart and the body, especially the body, is neglected, to get in touch with that. But then my path was coming back to the mind and seeing, and I resisted that at first. Oh no, I want to be out of my mind. It's great, But to come back to that and see that there's so much value in that, and to develop the intellect. And then to, one of the core tenets of the Buddha's teachings, I think, is right thinking.
Yeah.
You've got to have a right understanding of what's going on, what it means to be a human, and what it means to be on the spiritual path, what it means to be following a teacher or following teachings. So there's so much room for the intellect, and to develop that and to not be a slave to it, but to use it. And that takes, study and reading And it's fascinating to me. I love it. It's
Yeah.
fascinating, and it really aids that discernment and maybe developing, wisdom.
Definitely. Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. Yeah.
And to connect this to how we started the conversation about authenticity, I think that's really the way for us to become more authentic, is by really getting to know ourselves more in order to be able to show up as ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So let's move on to the closing curiosity questions. First one will be, what is something you didn't think you could do and you did? I mean, we kind of talked about it, but...
I didn't know that question was coming. One of the scariest things I ever did was I was at university only about 10 years ago. And my friend was doing the nude modeling for the life drawing classes. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's frightening. I'll do that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And that was really frightening. Like all the things I've done when it maybe, adventures up mountains and in dangerous parts of the world and this and that. This was more frightening. Yeah. And it's not like I hadn't appeared naked in front of people before, but this was weird.
Yeah. They're drawing you.
Yeah. So I definitely had the day coming up to that. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. A voice in my head, I can't do this. I can't do this. So, but I'm going to do it. I can't. And even up to the moment I'm sitting there in my gown and they're like, okay, so we're ready now. We'll stand in the middle of the room and take off your gown. I can't do this. I can't do it. Like right up to that moment. And I go and I drop the gown. And then about a second later, I'm like, oh, this is nothing. This is easy. I'm like, fine. Strike a pose, and then halftime comes and they all go to get tea and biscuits, and I guess I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to put my gown back on now.
Oh no!
To go to the tea table, and I'm like, I didn't. Okay, I did put it back on, but I thought, what's the point in that? I was so at ease in that situation. I'd had several days and all these hours of this fear. I can't do this.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like, it wasn't like a physical feeling. It was just that voice. I can't, no way. And it was instantly nothing the moment I did it.
Yeah.
Which is the true for most things, I think.
Yeah.
As long as the people around us are good, I guess. We might say, I said earlier, I might have a fear about saying something to somebody, which might be a valid fear because it's all about how they're going to receive it. It was all about how the group would receive me.
Yeah.
And they received me well.
Yeah.
So.
I read about this morning that the Dalai Lama said that it's really about your intention. And then if your intention is pure and you're really doing it for with a good, pure heart intention, then even if you fall short or even if you're not able to do something, then that means that just the situation was bigger than your abilities. But as long as you have this good intention within yourself, then you can still feel good about whatever happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's good.
Next question. What gives you hope?
For myself or for the world or what?
Both.
Hope for the world is, I must be a terrible person, but I don't think too much about the world. I think the world's going to do what it does. And I do believe in progress and evolution, and that we're probably getting better despite all the difficult things that we can see all the time around us. But, I do feel it's going in the right direction. But also if it doesn't and we wipe ourselves out, that's not so bad either, So maybe that's something that gives me hope personally and globally, is like, even if death comes or global, there's more, there's still something more. And I don't think that's an airy-fairy statement that I make. I think it's something that's based on experience, and my personal experience has shown me that. Maybe that's where my personal hope comes, is that we call it a belief in the higher power or a connection to a higher power that I've seen work in my life over and over again. Mm-hmm. That even if I'm reduced to nothing, I'll still be fine and I'll still have lots. And I'll still have everything I need and everything that's necessary.
Yeah.
So it's easy to be hopeful when it's like when you can't lose anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And last question, what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about how much of this 1 hour, 45-minute recording is going to make it to the final version.
I'm curious about that too.
But, yeah, I'm curious about how much of the giggling you're going to keep and whether you'll keep this sentence.
We'll see.
Yeah.
How can people stay connected with you?
Stay connected or become connected?
Become connected. Well, I feel like there's a kind of connection throughout this conversation.
Oh, nice. That's a good way of looking at it. That's a good question. I hadn't thought of that. Well, we're Facebook friends, so they can find me through you in that way. I'm friends with all the Yandara people.
Facebook, Rory Miller.
Yeah.
Instagram?
They can... No. What's that? TikTok?
Don't have a TikTok account? I'm shocked.
Yeah. You can always.
Yeah.
If they think.
How can they find your books?
Exactly. I could buy one of my books.
How do they find them?
They're all on Amazon.
Amazon, Rory Miller.
Well, 3 of them are in my name.
And the other 3?
2 of them are in a pseudonym.
Oh, really?
And one's a secret book with a secret pseudonym that not a single person on the planet knows about. And it's going to stay that way.
I love that.
But anyway, there's 2 Rory Millers on Amazon. One of them writes martial arts and like confidence building books. And then the other one's me.
Okay. Well, Rory, thank you so much. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Good. I'm glad. It was fun.
Wait, I'm doing it again.
No, keep that one.
No.
No. Bye.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.